Lorraine. So thank you all so much for joining and welcome. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Winnie Anand Forson, and I'm one of the co-founders of Excellerate Black Futures. You're all here today because we're going to hear the career spotlight for Lorraine Wright, and we're so excited to have her with us at our first ever Excellerate Black Futures inspirational session, and I'm sure you're all rearing to go. Before we kick off, I'd like to introduce
Hey, Winnie.
Can you hear me? Dee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Would
you like to introduce yourself and introduce the session?
Well, sorry, Winnie, I think you just got cut off when you introduced yourself, but I'm sure they'll get to know a lot more about you during the session. So I'll just dive in and introduce myself, and obviously you guys will get to know more and more about us as the year progresses anyway. So just to introduce myself, my name's Bukola. I have worked in HR for the last 15 or so years, and I think Winnie and I created Excellerate Black Futures in order to give back more than anything else. I think 2020 was a very reflective year for us, and obviously the 2020 with all of the pandemic and the George Floyd and the focus on diversity, a lot of our conversations were focused on that, and we're big doers, so it was more around what can we do, and Excellerate was it. So I'm just going to introduce Excellerate Black Futures. Conscious it's our first event, so just wanted to let you guys know who we are, what we're about, and what we aim to do. So Winnie and I obviously have worked together for quite some time in Barclays, and a lot of the stuff we've learned in our career has been by a trial and error. And so a lot of our conversations have been around how do we bottle up some of those experiences and share that with the young Black professionals coming up in their early careers. So the mission for Excellerate Black Futures is very much to educate young Black professionals, students, entrepreneurs, equipping them with practical tools. So Winnie and I learn quite differently. I'm a visual and a practical person, so the emphasis is very much on practical tools and advice. And I think a lot of things we focus on as well is inspiring confidence. There's a lot of doom and gloom out there, so we want to be able to, once we've equipped people and given them some practical tools, to really inspire them so that they can go out into the world and excel. So our ethos is to educate, to provide practical tools, and also to inspire confidence with young Black professionals. And how we're going to do this, I'll cover this in the next few slides. So we will be pushing out scale-up events on a monthly basis. So this is our first event. And there are two strands, so educational series and inspirational series. So this series is very much an inspirational series. And once you meet Lorraine, it will be very evident as to why. And the idea is they're all an hour long. The pros of COVID is that virtual is everywhere now. So being connected and sharing information is as easy as it can be. So all of our events pushed out virtually on a monthly basis, around 60 minutes. Inspirational series will be introducing you to people at the top of their game who can share their career journeys, their hints and tips, things that are practical that you can go in and activate in your own careers. And then we'll also be focusing on educational series, so giving you information, so things like how to ace an interview, virtual visibility, which is huge, making sure that the fact that we're all working remotely now doesn't hamper your career. So we will be focusing on those two scale-up events all throughout the year. And then the third thing that we're focused on is also our group talent program. If you just go to the next slide, Winnie. And so our group talent program is to make sure that we are bottling some of the experiences that Winnie and I have shared over the last decade and a half in HR. It's a small program, so around 12 to 15 delegates. It's a bespoke 6-week group talent program, covering topics like be the CEO of your career, personal branding, especially virtual branding, given the year we're in, getting the best out of mentoring and coaching, the art of public speaking, engaging with stakeholders in the right way, you know, finding a sponsor. I think everyone who has excelled in their career, and Lorraine will probably talk a bit more about that, has had a sponsor at some point in their career. How do you find them? How do you engage with them? And then we've got a bringing it all together session at the end. There's lots of peer mentoring going on, and we're very focused about the relationships and the networking that you will achieve in that group talent program. So there's lots, you know, there's post the reflection exercises, pre-work that you can read on, lots of materials and resources that will be chopped your way. So that's our flagship program. And then also in addition to the scale up events, that's the idea of Excellerate. You will hear tons from us over the year, but I would just say, if you just keep close to us on the website, all of our upcoming events, everything will be on there. I'm going to shut up for a second and just pass on to Vinny and get her to talk about Lorraine, who I'm sure all of you are here to hear more about.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bea. That was a really good overview of everything that we have to offer. And if anyone has any questions for Lee about Excellerate Black Futures, please don't hesitate to put your questions in the chat box, and a member of our team will be able to help as we go throughout the session. I just want to remind you all that the session is being recorded, so please be aware of that from a data privacy standpoint. But like Bea said, we don't want to waste any more time. We are going to get right into the session with Lorraine. Like we said before, we are so excited to have Lorraine Wright with us, who is someone that has been on my idol list for a very long time. And she's certainly an inspiration to me, and I know to a lot of people who are here today and in our team as well. But for those who don't know Lorraine, Lorraine is a British-born Ghanaian and is a multifaceted businesswoman with a decade of corporate and entrepreneurial experience. She was born in Southwest London in Brixton, whoops, all the Brixtoners. And Lorraine is a University of Oxford Executive MBA graduate, a director at UBS, a Swiss global financial services firm, where she currently oversees the digital platforms managing UBS's social impact and their community affairs efforts, which is an amazing, gratifying role to be in. Alongside her day job, Lorraine is committed to impacting and transforming lives through her multiple businesses across the UK and Ghana. And most of you will know, if you've been following Lorraine's journey, that she's the founder of the University Gospel Choir of the Year, which was an annual competition for university choirs across the UK. And also UV Talent, which is a music talent agency supporting talent shows like X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, The Voice, and Voxer, which is a music competition app. So Lorraine is very busy, but as if she wasn't busy enough, there's even more. In Ghana, Lorraine is the owner of the Leona Nails Beauty Spa and the head of sales for the fast-growing agritech startup, which is called Grow For Me. And the ambition for agritech and also the organization Grow For Me is to seek to address food security and also accessibility issues in Ghana and more broadly in Africa as well, and the diaspora. Lorraine was named the 2018 Powerless Rising Star and also awarded a Black British Business Award. I mean, I'm sure you would all love to see Lorraine's CV, because I don't know how you fit all of that on there, Lorraine, and how many hours you have in the day to do it all. And I'm sure everyone would love to find out. So Lorraine, welcome to the session. I'll just make it bigger so everyone can see you. There you go, welcome.
Thank you,
Lorraine. Let's start with hearing more about you, because I think for most people, when they see and hear about all of these accomplishments, they forget that Lorraine started from somewhere, right? So tell us a bit more about the humble Lorraine, born from Brixton, and your journey from where you started to where you are now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So firstly, thank you very much to the Excellerate Black Futures team, just for inviting me to be on this maiden edition. It's really impressive what you're doing, and you know, it was such a much needed thing, especially when you're very much early part of your career and looking for actionable steps in terms of the ways and means to navigate your career. I didn't have that, so I've kind of made the path myself. So with you guys that are on this call today, this is exciting, because you're going to skip all the things that we kind of did, you know, where we went wrong, and kind of, you know, do better than we've done. And that's our goal. So a lot of people that are maybe in my position, Winnie's position, and everyone else on the team, we want to leave the door wide open for people to come and do better than us. And that's the purpose of what we're doing right now. You know, so I'm really, really excited about what the team's doing. I'm looking forward to being part of this as much as possible as well. So congratulations to you guys, firstly. But yeah, so in terms of my background, just to answer your question, so as you mentioned, you know, born and bred in Southwest London. I was born to in a single parent household, to a Ghanaian parent, and essentially, you know, we really had drummed in us a work ethos. It was all about education and work. You know, so the moment I hit 16, I was out the door, you know, working my first retail job. I personally really wanted to do the retail job because I wanted to be out of the house on a Saturday because I didn't want to do all the house. You know, if you come from a Ghanaian background, you know that your responsibilities on the weekend are to do chores. I mean, I'm sure that was with other cultures as well.
Yeah.
I personally did not want to do it. So my focus was, let me get out of the house on the weekends and let me go and make money. So my first job, I got it at 16, working for Mother Care. I mean, Mother Care has gone bust now, but anyone that knows Mother Care, I'm sure you'll be aware of it. So moved on from there, worked for another retail company, H&M, and then started and doing that while I was doing my education. So also pursuing my A-levels and then also went on to do my degree. So I did my degree at Brunel University in West London. I did my undergraduate in information systems. Whilst I was at university, I also did an internship. I actually chose Brunel University because I really wanted to make sure I get work experience. It is so important to get work experience. And that is the main reason, absolutely. I mean, there's a main reason why I chose that university, because the course allowed you to take a sandwich placement a year out. So I chose that university for that reason. So when I started the course, second year, third year, you're out working for a company. So I did my internship working for Volkswagen. I was doing some, especially considering the fact that my course was in IT, I was working in their IT department in their head office. I chose Volkswagen because I just wanted to have a company car. Literally, I have reasons for why I picked that. So I ended up working there and got a company car as well. But also, when you take out the sandwich year, you know, you finish university and you start your summer break. You probably start your course. You probably start the internship around June, and it goes June to June. So I finished in June, but realized I don't start university until back into October. So I had still another 2 or 3 months. So what I did was maximize that time. I then took another summer internship. So I managed to find a summer internship with Accenture. And again, I wanted to do the summer internship with Accenture because they offered accommodation and I didn't want to go back home. So
your rationale for all your decisions are just cracking me up so far.
It's always rationale, you know.
So brilliant.
They put you up in accommodation in Tower Bridge. They feed you everything, you know. And remember, I live in South London and I'm living in Tower Bridge, you know, and you're
priorities.
Exactly.
Priorities.
Exactly. So I did that summer internship, but it was that summer internship that landed me in my graduate position with Accenture.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very important to try and get as much experience as possible. So I'm going to fast forward. So I finished my degree at Brunel. I had my graduate position already secured before I graduated. But back then was when the recession hit. So I was actually the equivalent of furloughed at the point. So essentially they told us that we can't start our graduate role, but they'll continue to pay us. So I was like, okay, well, great. But some people would just go sit at home and do nothing. But I thought, let me maximize this time and do something with it. So I applied for different companies. Again, I really wanted a car, so I applied to Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I applied for estate agencies. I didn't get the job with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, but I worked for an estate agent for like a month, and I absolutely hated it because I hated lying to people. And then just thought, you know, I need to get out of London, and managed to find myself a role in the States. So I actually ended up working for a company in Chicago, and I spent my time there during that period of time where I would have been working for Accenture. Finished work in Chicago, came back to UK, worked for Accenture for a couple of years. For those people that don't know Accenture, Accenture is a management consultancy company. It is in the league of, or the likes of PwC, KPMG, Deloitte, and so on and so forth. So the beauty of those kind of companies is that you get to work for a client, you get to work with a client, and you get to consult and provide almost guidance to those companies in ways they can optimize their processes and ways they can do different things. And I happen to have my client when I was with Accenture happened to be UBS. And so that is the way that I managed to start working for UBS. So I was working very closely with a client. I'm sure we'll go into some of this into more details as we progress through. But you know, long story short, I got poached by the client that I was working with. So they asked me to come and work internally and no longer work for Accenture. It was quite a tough decision, but they dangled a carrot where they doubled my salary. And I was like, yeah, fine, let's go. Wow. And ended up working for UBS since. So during my career at UBS, I've had quite a rapid progression. I've worked in and lived in Switzerland for 3.5 years. UBS has sponsored my executive MBA with the University of Oxford. I've traveled around the world with the company. So it's been really, really exciting and really great. And all the while I've been running different side hustles on the side because I just like to keep busy. So that's my career in a nutshell. I hope I haven't taken too long, but I hope you give a flavor of who I am and what I do.
You know what? If there was ever a description of a nutshell, that is not a nutshell. I don't know how you've been able to achieve so much in such a short space of time. And what you neglected to mention, Lorraine, is most of this happened before you were at the age of 27, which is phenomenal. So I think for most people who are trying to build their careers, you talked so much about opportunities that you had, some of the rationale behind the decisions you were making, how you essentially shaped a career that really helped you to move at pace and progress at pace. You talked about being poached from a client as well. And I think what would be interesting for all of us to hear is what skills and capabilities you developed over time or were intentional about developing over time that essentially set you apart to make you more desirable when these great kind of roles came up, when these great opportunities came up. Because I'm sure there was something they saw that they loved and said, Lorraine, come on this side. And how can others learn from that, and what skills and capabilities should they be building to prepare themselves for great opportunities?
Sure. So I just like to say that one size doesn't always fit all. And also I've had to learn to kind of navigate my own career. I was the first in my family to go to university. I never really had that hand holding to navigate me through. But I think it just came from, number one, the work experience I had gained at university, but also just the sheer fact that I come from a working class background. And that working class background has given us the incentive and the motivation to just try and just pursue and try and just break barriers in all areas, you know, because we don't want to keep and be in the same place and position that we've been in. So in terms of the skills that I believe is quite important is number one, networking, absolutely networking. I think building your circle of influence is totally important. So for me, I was promoted very, very quickly at UBS and also Accenture. I got promoted within a year at Accenture. And then when I got to UBS, I was promoted to director very young. And a lot of that happened because people used to call me a social butterfly. I don't really do that now, but and I was very intentional with networking. And so I think it's important to be intentional when it comes to networking. Identify who are the people that really make the decisions. And when you identify those people, starting to understand how can you relate to them. So for instance, at UBS, the person that helped me to get promoted happened to be an avid skier. I used to try and relate to that person by maybe, finding out, I happened to live in Zurich at the time. I started to go and skiing with him, and started to relate with the individual. If you can find ways and means to relate, we're all human beings at the end of the day. We all have things that will trigger us. It's almost when you send an email, for example, you send an email with a subject line that will capture that person that's reading it, because we're all humans. So if you can capture that person that you are also networking with, especially if they're a decision maker that's going to help you progress your career, then that's perfect. When it comes to networking as well, I learned that it's not always about what you're going to receive, but also what you can give. So I tried as much as possible to look at ways that I wouldn't put myself in an environment where I would be asking all the time, but rather offering my services. So when it came to work, what can I do to help you? Can I help you with this? Can I do this? Can I do that? And that way you're building a relationship, but they're also seeing the skills that you can do. The next area, in terms of, just to answer your question, Winnie, I played the game. I want to be very, very clear. There is a corporate game played. people might not, this might not be politically correct for me to say it, but there is a game to be played. You need to know who are the people that are making decisions. You need to know, if you are early on in your career, some of the things that are going to move those people. Are the things, when I was starting my career, the things that moved my decision makers were them seeing me at work before they got to work, them seeing me at work after they got to work, after they left work from work. That was just things I had to do, you know, to be seen. So playing the game involves being visible. How can you be visible? Are there things that you're doing that, you know, take you above and beyond your normal day-to-day work? Are there any presentations you can do that will put yourself out there? Can you be visible through other means? Are there any clubs and societies that you could join whilst in your corporate environment? Are there any problems that you've identified and you can maybe help identify solutions to those and present and pitch them to senior management? These are ways that you can become visible. So those are some of the skills that I learned on the job. And then probably one other as well is always, or rather penultimately, is always learning how to challenge. I think one of the ways that I got promoted quite quickly is the concept of challenging. Don't just accept things for don't just take it as it is. Always look at, if someone says, okay, this is how it is, ask why is it like that, you know? And find ways to challenge, because it is so senior managers, when you hear, but challenge in the corporate sense, not challenge in terms of you're wrong, challenge in terms of providing what your rationale is for why you believe that thing may be incorrect or could be done differently. So I learned very early on that challenge actually sets you apart from other people. When you start to accept things as it is, you might just be pushed and shoved into the background. But the moment you speak up and say, okay, it can be like this because of this reason, so always add your rationale. And, you know, I've just showed you why I chose certain things because there was a rationale behind it. Then people start to see your logic. They start to think, they start to understand how you think. And that can then, you know, elevate you forward a little bit. And then lastly, when it came to just me trying to, you know, push forward and trying to get, you know, some of these achievements, it's about using your own initiative. A lot of us are entrepreneurs within, and being in the corporate environment, how do you bring the entrepreneurial aspect of you into the work environment? You know, even if you're not here on the call to work in a corporate environment, but you want to be entrepreneurial and work for yourself, it is still around how you use your own initiative. You know, what is the market saying and how you're meeting that demand? What is the problem out there and how are you solving it? You know, what risks are you taking? How are you mitigating those risks? These are things that exist both within the work environment and also in the, you know, the entrepreneurial environment. So these are things I learned very early on in order for me to start to accelerate my career. So I hope that answered your question.
That is so helpful. And I think one of the things that you really said that resonated is when you talked about playing the game. I like to think of the workplace as a construct. It's a social construct. And we've got to remember that things that you might do in your day job or in your daily life may not necessarily be a lift and drop. You have to understand the environment you're in and the construct that you're in and act accordingly. And I think that links in really well with everything else you said, how you relate to the individuals you work with, how you brand yourself, how they perceive you, and also how you act like an entrepreneur at work. I love that. And actually, one of the things that we will do later on this year is have a session on entrepreneurship, so how to be an entrepreneur in the workplace. So it's great that you've alluded to that. And everyone, please make sure that you follow us on our social media and also visit our website for more information on upcoming events, because that will be one of the next events that we do. So thank you, Lorraine. Great plug there. I'm just going to remind everybody before I move on to the next question that you can start to ask questions. There will be a segment for Q&A. So please pop your questions into the chat box and someone in our team will pick them up so that when it's time for Q&A, we will get Lorraine to kindly respond to them. So thank you. So Lorraine, one of the things that you mentioned was how to identify the right people in the workplace who will basically help you to advance. So you talked about being visible, making sure that they see you when you're there, and then you're there when they're there at the same time. How do you think that mentors and sponsors have played a role in your progression, and how can other people, especially those on the call, utilize some of those relationships to succeed in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, dare I say it, I've always looked out to have mentors. I had one very early on in my career, and I have one more kind of now. But in the middle, I never really had a formal mentor. You know, everyone runs out and looks, well, can you be my mentor? But what I had is I had sponsors. I had people that were looking out for me. And I think that if I was able to articulate the difference, sponsors are people that you don't necessarily have to sit down with. They are basically there to kind of push you forward in that environment. So they are sponsoring you because they want you to succeed in that context. A mentor might not.
They're promoting you in rooms that you can't be in, basically, aren't they?
Absolutely. That's exactly it. Exactly it. Whereas a mentor could be peripheral to that, or could be in a different environment or a different context. I never really, although I was always on the lookout for a mentor, I never really had one in the formal context or the formal side of it, but I had people around me that I could use as, they wouldn't know that they're my mentor, but I would know I'm communicating to them as if they are my mentor. Those conversations for me were absolutely pivotal. You might sit down, I'm going to use the word mentor, but I just wanted to be transparent with my experience. But you can sit down with these people, go for coffee with these individuals, and just, even though your conversation might not necessarily be about yourself or totally linked to what you're doing, just one thing they might say might plant a seed in your mind that might lead to something. And I'm sure all of you have been in these environments or these contexts before where you've had a conversation, and it could be totally something off topic, but just one thing that's mentioned could lead and steer your direction completely. And I think it's those conversations that I started to have with people that really helped me and influenced me in my career. You know, when it comes to sponsors, these are individuals that actually I sought out to sponsor me with certain things. So it could well be with my promotion. So if I knew that I'm coming up for promotion, who are the people that are going to be in the room when they're making decisions on promotions? I will then sit down with them. I'll then ask them, what are the criteria? What are the people going to be looking for in order to promote someone? So they'll give me that information, and the information is not hidden. It's just up to you to be able to push and do and act in that accordingly. So the information I was given was, you know, operate above your level. Okay, so if I'm being told to operate above your level, what do I do? Okay, I'll then go and find people that are actually above my level and try and find out and look and emulate how they are operating, you know? So I've got the information, I now need to make sure it happens. If they tell me, for example, I now need to take on stretch targets, I need to understand, okay, what are my objectives today? How can I stretch them and try and deliver more above and beyond what I've been asked? So I think sponsors for me have played an absolute crucial role in my progression. They've also helped me. As I mentioned in my intro, it was my sponsors that contributed to me getting my Black British Business Award, and also then for me to get UBS to fully sponsor me on my executive MBA course at Oxford. Now, it was because of the person I was working for who was then able to put me forward for the award, who was then able to put me forward to senior managers and said, I've won the award, who the senior managers were then able to say, you know, they don't mind mentoring me or coaching me. That was the term. And then I was able to utilize that relationship to say, I want to do an MBA. Can you sponsor me financially in this process? And that's how I managed to get that. So I think having mentors and sponsors allow you to skip certain processes. They're giving you the pathway for you to kind of, you know, maneuver, rather than you kind of having to figure it out yourself. A mentor is also great because you can just have very open conversations. As I said, off topic. They might not even know the context that you're working within, but they might have certain experiences that might be parallel experiences or peripheral experiences that you can potentially learn from. And again, you might not fall trap, or you might not, you know, fall to some of those issues, areas they might have covered before. And also, they might also have a network, you know, they might have additional people that you can reach out to and speak to, and that might also help progress you in certain ways. So for me personally, the relationships, A, helped me in terms of understanding how to navigate my career a little bit better. B, it also helped me to think a little bit more broadly, what else is out there? Because you don't know everything. So having a context of something else, out there is also very helpful. It helped me with sponsoring me in the work environment. And it also helps just having conversations with people, help you to get better with having conversations. And it also helps you just to start to think in a different way, understand how other people think. So I hope that answered your question, but certainly has helped me.
Definitely. And I really liked that you really kind of brought to life in your own experience the difference between how mentorship and sponsorship have helped you. And I think as you were talking, I was reflecting and thinking about, from a D&I standpoint, we talk a lot about equity for the Black community. How do we create a level playing field for Black people to be able to thrive just as much as, people of other races do? And I think mentorship and sponsorship is a great way to do that, because I love that you illustrated that it essentially puts you in places that you've not been in. It opens up your mind to what possibilities could be. And you talk about being from a working class family. I'm sure many people can relate to that, as I certainly do. And I think mentorship has been a great opportunity for me to see that there is a world beyond the world that you're used to. So I love that you brought that to life. Definitely answered my question. Thank you. I've seen some questions coming through on the Q&A. So just to remind one more time, we'll be opening up for Q&A shortly. But I've got one more question for you, Lorraine. I know with everything going on around the Black Lives Matter movement, I think there can be the tendency for the narrative to be quite negative in the kind of Black talent stroke career space. And it's really refreshing to hear a story of a really influential Black person who's gone on and done lots of amazing things, not only in the corporate world, but also within your own sphere of influence and doing that on the side as well. So would you say that being Black has hindered you in any way or caused any challenges? Or would you say it's actually been an opportunity to kind of thrive? How would you say it's influenced your career? And also what pitfalls from your journey would you say would be good for other people to look out for so that they don't get hindered, if that's been the case for you?
Yeah, interesting question. And I may be a little bit controversial here, because I think everyone is looking out for someone to say, oh, it's done this to me, it's done this to me, it's prevented me from entering into here, it's prevented me from doing this. I'm controversial in the sense that overtly, and I'm going to use the word overtly, I do not believe it has hindered me. In fact, it has provided me with certain opportunities to be seen and be more visible. So when you are in the minority, you are seen. How you make sure that you are seen to your benefit is what's going to work out, is what's going to progress you. So when I first started at UBS, was on the floor in Liverpool Street of about 200 people. There was probably 2 of us on the floor, of Black people, So I'm visible already. So the fact that you're visible, how do you maximize that opportunity whilst you are visible? So in fact, it gave me an opportunity to kind of stand up rather than being, how do I put it in the most politically correct way? I can't figure out a way, but it allowed me to stand out from the crowd. Let me just put it that way. However, overtly, it hasn't proved to be a hindrance, but covertly, it may have been. And when I talk about that, I mean in the sense of when I think about it deeply. Remember, I was the first to go to university in my family. We come from a background where my mum was, I am first generation Ghanaian. My mum came over from Ghana and had me. So if I came from a different background, maybe let's say a Caucasian background, there could be certain things from my cultural upbringing that I might have had a head start with. And that could be, for example, maybe the university I chose. I could have potentially gone to a different university. I didn't have any guidance with the university that I went to, other than the fact that I knew I wanted to have work experience. So I found the university that offered that opportunity. What if I got 3 A's at A level? Why couldn't I have not gone to Oxbridge? I didn't even apply. And at the time, 3 A's was the top. I think now it's A stars, right? But at the time, 3 A's, I did 4 A levels and I got top grades. So why couldn't I have applied for an Oxbridge then? Now, if I applied to Oxbridge, there might be other, you know, networks I might have been part of. And it's not just centered on Oxbridge. So I don't want to, you know, exclude other people, but, you know, because all universities, and in fact, I was totally happy with the university that I went to, which I'm thankful that I did go to that university. But there are certain certain things that other people outside of the Black community might have access to that we necessarily didn't have access to in this environment of the corporate world. It could well be because someone's uncle or dad works in a certain company, so they've left the door open, very open, you know, very wide open for someone else. So it means that that person can easily get, you know, a step up the ladder. Mm-hmm. It could be because someone's uncle was already a doctor, so they managed to coach them through, you know, how to go through the medical degree or whatever it may be. It could be because I'm just saying that there could be some covert things or some deeply rooted things that have hindered me that I haven't seen on the peripheral level. But because of the sheer fact that I am from that community, I might not have had access to. For example, it could well be I didn't go to boat parties to network with people that are on boats. I might have access to yachts or whatever it may be. You know, I might not have had access to that. Not saying that everyone from the Caucasian background has access to boats, but there could have been something else I could have had access to. However, I do think equally, or if not more beneficial, is the fact that being in the minority allows you to be visible. So maximizing the opportunity to be visible is what has worked for me. Now, I'm not saying that I was promoted because I was Black, but I'm saying that I was able to utilize the fact that I was in a minority to try and get more opportunities, to stand out, for people to go into a room and they remember, who am I, you know? But there have been times when there's been microaggressions, maybe. There's times when I was living in Switzerland and I remember going in where, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a phase one time when everyone was having ombre weave or whatever it was. And I remember going into the office one time and they said to me, oh, that hair is a bit crazy, isn't it? You know, and they'll make that term. But so what that automatically did to me is made me feel like I need to be very consistent with my hairstyles, you know? So I need to make sure that I don't change it often because someone will then start to make a comment. So I then start to just make sure I have normal black or, you know, light brown weave or my natural hair or whatever it may be, or braid, just keeping it very simple and not going over and above, you know? And that was because I didn't want any comments. And so those are the kind of experiences that I've had, but I've never had an experience where I felt like I was left out because I was Black, or I felt like I was being hindered because I was Black.
And I love that you've been honest about that and given a very balanced response, because I think we're in times when, you know, there's a lot around the media and social media, especially, and we all have access to news. And I think what I love about what you shared is that you were able to control the narrative for yourself. So regardless of whatever the outcome may be for other people or what the narrative may be for them, for you thought, actually, I'm going to flip this and think about how I can stand out and utilize the spotlight that I have to almost be a catalyst for my career. And I love that you've also referenced the fact that it's not the fact that the things didn't happen. They may have happened. And you know, you shared some good examples there, but you almost kind of influence what you could influence and use it to the best of your ability. And I think that's definitely inspirational and beneficial for us all to hear about, because I think we're in a time when there is so much going on, especially with George Floyd's passing last year and a lot of things coming to light, that we're very lucky as a generation to have awareness, but equally remembering that there is some elements of the narrative that we're able to control and use to our benefit. So thank you. That's been really, really insightful. I'm going to stop talking now because I'm mindful I'm probably getting carried away, and I'm going to invite Bukola back so we can go through some of the questions in the Q&A. Bukola, what are people asking?
They are asking lots of questions. Before I just jump in, there's just one thing I was going to add. I think the one consistent theme in everything Lorraine has shared is being intentional. For me, that's my key tip. There's lots of things that you've explained that's been tossed at you. So you talked about going to Brunel, and to your point, you know, people might think I will only make it if I go to Oxford or Cambridge, and that's the only thing. But you've been able to turn any situation, whatever the context, to your advantage. I love that when you started your grad role, you were almost furloughed. So I'm guessing this was around the season in 2008. And I think lots of people early in their career will be feeling that type of way now. I know 2020 is unprecedented, but it's not brand new. We've gone through tough times before. And I love that when that happens to you, instead of going, oh my God, what am I going to do? You were like, right, I've got a few months. How am I going to get some extra pay? How am I going to get some extra experience? And I think for me, that just blew me away. It's about being intentional. Whatever life throws at you, is you're constantly thinking, this bit I can't do, this bit I can. So what do I want? What's my objective? So I just wanted to call that out, because I know that that's certainly what people will be feeling given the year we've had. Question time. Lovely question around your MBA. So when you talked about your MBA, the question we had was this part of your offer from UBS? And if not, how did you navigate around approaching them to ask for this? And my additional question to this is also because I've got a part-time MBA, why did you choose to do an MBA as well? I know that's a 3-part loaded question.
Okay. So, yeah, no, good. I get this question all the time, but just a plug for myself. I have a YouTube channel, and I spent about an hour going through this whole topic. So you can look up Chief Side Hustler or Lorraine Wright, I think, and you can probably find it on YouTube, just around how I got my MBA. But just to keep it short, I have always wanted to do an MBA. And I wanted to do that because I knew that I was going to be very much business focused in my career. So the moment I even finished my, and I'm very big, and this might be speaking a little bit out of context here, but I'm very big on visions and writing down your vision and making it plain. I'm very big on, if you have a vision, write it down, because whatever you don't visualize will not materialize. So when I left university, I knew that I wanted to do an MBA. And I literally got a piece of paper, and I said, I want to do an MBA. And I knew I wanted to study at one of the world's best universities. So I remember writing it down. So having done that, and I remember I said I wanted to do it in the next 5 years or something like that. So having done that, I always had in the back of my mind the fact that I wanted to do an MBA. I always thought, look, I'm going to try and apply to Harvard. But as my career progressed, there was no way for me to take out a year and go and do that course. So things shifted for me to try and find a course that would work around me and not me around the course. So then I started looking for courses that would allow me to work full-time, but also study part-time. So I did end up finding Oxford, which happens to do a course that you go into Oxford a week every month, and it's for 2 years. And so I was able to then start a negotiation process with work. So the course costs 6 figures, almost 100 grand. And I knew there was no way that I'll be able to financially support that unless I remortgaged my house or did something. But because I always knew I wanted to do it, every time, and I don't know, whichever companies you guys will enter in of your early career or whatever companies you're part of, I'm sure you will do some kind of performance review or something like that where you're setting the targets for yourself. What I always used to do is I used to hint to my manager all the time. I used to say, I want to do MBA. Oh, I hope that I can do an MBA in the future or something like that. So there's always a seed in their mind that Lorraine wants to do an MBA, you know? So for years, I kept putting this in my action plan, in my goals for the year. It will never materialize in that year, but at least I can reflect back and, you know, tell my manager, even if I moved into a different role, you know, these were my goals last year. I really want to do an MBA, you know, and always kept it as part of the conversation. 5-6 years later, it took me 6 years before I can actually get it done. And I basically went through our HR department at work. Our company is really good with supporting external training, and basically wrote a proposal on why I wanted to do the course. And I knew I wanted to do the course because A, I had rapidly progressed through the company at UBS, but B, because I wanted to be able to ask better questions. Mm-hmm. Coming up from a Ghanaian background, you're taught not to challenge things, you know, you're taught just to accept things as it is. But I knew in the work environment, that's not how it is. You can't be quiet. And as I said earlier on, you have to learn to challenge things. So I wanted to learn how to better challenge things, how to ask better questions. So I put that literally on my proposal to work and said, here are the reasons, and I outlined a business case. Here's the reasons why I want to do an MBA. Can you sponsor me? And so I put that in, and because I had a sponsor who was, and I don't want to go back over what I've just mentioned, but because I had a sponsor very high in the company, I was able to submit that proposal also to him, and he was able to sponsor with his words and his weight that I can go ahead and do that. HR came back and they said, yeah, they'll be fine with sponsoring me. They'll give me $5 grand. I said, $5 grand? That's left with 95 grand. How am I going to pay for the rest of it? You know, and then it was a negotiation more and more and more. It was like, you know, I'm here working full time. How am I going to get the time off? So I managed to negotiate for them to pay for it, for me to get a week off every month, for me to get study leave. What else? And I was still on full salary. And I only had to remain with the company a year after. Otherwise, if I left before a year, I would have to pay it all back. You know, so I managed to negotiate all that with the company, but I'm still here because I love the company. I love working for UBS. You know, so I was able to do that MBA, and I was able to network, meet new people, new interesting people. Oxford were the only, Harvard, although I wanted to go to Harvard initially, Harvard just didn't do courses that allowed you to do it around your work. But Oxford allowed that. And I personally was so focused when I did my research. Research showed me that if you're going to do an MBA, because it's so common right now, do it at a top business school. You know, because a top business school not only will give you the name, well, actually not only give you the education, but it will give you the name. And MBAs are just far too common right now. So at least the least I have is the name of being able to go to Oxford, you know, and that was a personal thing for me. I'm not saying it's for everyone, but that was more of a personal goal for myself.
Brill. Thank you for that. I think that's great. And I think the plug that I will put in there is you talked around the conversations you have with your performance management appraisal, with your manager, just to plug in that next month. That's one of the things I'm going to be covering. So I work in performance at the minute. So lots of hints and tips on how to focus on your development, not just on your objectives. So it's a great shout out on that front. Thanks, Lorraine.
Lorraine's helping us with all of our plugs.
I know, right? This is brilliant. Just sidelining all of this. Another question we had was, what are some of the ways to work on social skills so that you can network better?
Wow, good question. So as I mentioned earlier on, I think your going in position should always be what can you offer other people, not what you can get. But in terms of how better to work, how better to build those skills, I think we're in an environment right now, especially for people that are not comfortable with physical networking. We're in an environment where you can virtually network now, you know, and it's so easy. So leveraging LinkedIn is perfect, or leveraging a platform like Excellerate, where you come onto this Zoom, and maybe you've seen someone ask a question. Maybe that question could be something that you were asking. You might want to reach out to that person, or maybe the person who's speaking, or maybe the host. You can find out more about them. Just drop them an email, and then you will then start to have a conversation with that person over time. So I think for me, I learned I'm sure no one is perfect at networking. I'm sure everyone still has, you know, nerves and, you know, whatever it may be, but we're all human beings. So I always have to remind myself, we're all human beings when it comes to it. So everyone started from somewhere. So the skills that I always use or apply when I'm networking is, what can I offer to other people? And if you've progressed in your discussions or your relationship with someone, you can then start to make sure you time box your make it very clear what it is. So once you've moved past, you know, that initial conversations or relationships, make it very clear what it is that you need from someone, you know, and have a very clear goal from that perspective. Because I've realized that you can network with someone, you can build that relationship, but then at the end of it, you might not necessarily get out of it what you actually wanted to get out of it. But I know that sounds a little bit contradictory. Always start off your relationship offering. Don't start off by asking. But then as you progress, you're going to build that relationship. So you're going to be able to ask exactly what you want to get. But these are just certain skills that you learn over time. So put yourself in environments, put yourself in challenging environments for yourself, and then just do it. You know, you can't fail with networking. You can't fail. You're always you can meet a new person, even if the person, you know, ends up just being a hi, bye friend, or whatever it may be, at least you've done it. So I don't think there's any hard and fast rules for how to build the skills to do it. But just to be able to understand, is there something that you have in common with that person? How can you build a relationship with that person? How can you identify, something that triggers you both? And then you build your relationship up from there.
Brill. I think that's great. I think you mentioned something earlier when you talked about your background of being Ghanaian and how sometimes, it just might mean you're quieter than normal. You wouldn't walk into a room and kind of be, hi, my name's Lorraine, rah, rah, rah. And I think it's important about being intentional and just knowing, to your point, everyone is human. So, you can relate on a social level. It doesn't have to be corporate and technical from the get-go. So I think that's a good tip for everyone. I've got one question here that talks about how do you balance family, personal life with your career? And I'm going to add, how do you balance, career for me is UBS, side hustles, coming on Excellerate, having a YouTube channel. It's like the list is endless. How are you managing all that?
So for me, I'm the kind of person, if I do one thing, I will never get that one thing done because I'll just procrastinate forever. So for me, if I have multiple things on the go, I know that something has to be done. So I'll ultimately, I will have to find a way to get them done. And it actually makes me work faster that way. If I don't have many things on the go, then there's no chance it's going to get done. But what I'm big on, so I have a beauty spa in Ghana, for instance. And people always ask me, oh, Lorraine, are you at the shop? And I'm like, no. You're like, are you at the shop? I'm like, no. And I'm like, because I have systems that I've put in place to make sure it operates without me. When you're building a business, I've always had in the back of my mind, you need to build a business that it would run and operate without you. You don't expect Richard Branson to be at all of these companies every single day, do you? No, because he's building a company in order for it to run without him. Elon Musk, I'm sure he's not in the office every day. Jeff Bezos, is he in the office every day? Probably not. But these businesses can operate even if these people are not in the office. So for me, how I've managed to manage everything, I know I have to be in the office with UBS because that is my day job, right? But I manage my 5 to 9. So the morning, I'm not necessarily a morning person, but is there any emails I can quickly respond to in the morning? Or is there something I could do in the morning before work starts, before my day job starts? And then 5 to 9, you might finish at 6 or whatever it may be, but what are you doing in your evenings as well? I think I could be more productive in the evening. So how are you utilizing that time effectively? Things that I now try to do is I'm using, which is a brilliant app, Calendly. So I make sure that if people want to book sessions with me, they book it through Calendly. So I make sure that my diaries is up to date and synced. If people want to meet with me, I've literally had it where friends want to have a discussion with me. I say, book it in my diary. So then I know I've actually, they're like, Lorraine, why do I have to book a diary? It's on your diary. People call me just randomly off WhatsApp. And I'm like, please, they don't realize that your headspace might be focused on something. So I'd rather have it booked in so I know that, because once I'm focused on something, I might not change my focus because it might distract me. So I'm not the kind of person that likes to just get a random WhatsApp call. At least message me, let me know, okay, Lorraine, have you got time to meet with me? And I'll then book a slot with you or arrange a slot with you. Because that's just how I work. Because if you distract my focus, it might impact me for the rest of the day. So I like to be very focused with what I'm doing at that given point. Even if it's focused with spare time, even if it's focused with relaxing and watching Bridgerton or whatever it may be, I just want to be focused on that, So I want to make sure that I'm building the right environment for myself. And that's not only in the physical, but also in the mental. I'm very clear on, if you want to, you need to have the clear mental space to get something done. So if I knew I need to work on my shop, I'm going to just focus on my shop stuff. If I knew I'm working on the agriculture stuff, I'm going to work on the agriculture stuff. But if I'm working on something else, I try not to mix and match the items, the things in that particular time frame. But I always try my best, my absolute best, to make sure systems are built in areas that they can continue to run.
Yeah. Even
if I can't get to that thing immediately. And then prioritize. Always prioritize. I always make sure, I don't know if anyone knows that the matrix, the urgent, important matrix, You know, what are the things that are urgent, you can delegate, but the things that are important, you focus on them. So I now have a PA, for example, and I got a message today that said, oh, my public and employee liability insurance is expiring for my beauty spa. So I quickly send that to my PA to work on it. It's important, it's urgent, but it's not going to let my business fail. So I just delegated it straight to my PA and said, can you look at getting the new premium for me and getting that done? And she is just an intern. I don't want to say just an intern. She's absolutely fantastic. But if you can get people to help you, building a team around you of complementary skills, people that can take the burden off you, it always helps. You know, and all of the businesses that I run or am running with, I'm doing it with other people. It's not just me single-handedly.
Yeah.
So always building a team or having people that could complement your skills always works.
Bro, that's great. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to squeeze last two questions, and I'm just going to ask Lorraine if you can just spare 30 seconds each. So one question is, when you were approached by UBS, what gave you the assurance that it was the right company to move to? And then final question, so 30 seconds each. Final question is actually from me. So we've heard about, you know, the highlights of your career, and I think it's important to share how you've dealt with any low points, any failures, anything that hasn't kind of gone to plan. How have you managed that? Go.
I'll start with the last question first. Failures happen. It's how you just pick yourself up, how you can learn from those failures. So for me, it's just using those experiences and moving on from them, you know, just trying to understand where you went wrong and looking at making sure you don't follow that path again. But dust yourself off, the world doesn't end. You know, we're human beings, we all make mistakes, and just moving on from that. When it comes to UBS, when I was poached, I didn't know if it was the right decision. No one ever knows the future. I just knew that they were giving me double my salary. So I was like, yeah, fine, I'll take it. You know? So for me, I didn't know. I had no idea what the future would hold. But I just thought, you know, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I take risks. Here was a risk for me to take. And I just took it, and it's worked out in the end.
Brilliant. We've got 1 more minute. Thank you so much, Lorraine. I think it's been brilliant. I've learned a lot. I've got sheets and sheets of notes that I've scribbled, so thank you so much. Just for everyone who's still on, thank you for taking the time to invest in yourselves today. I'm sure there's been lots of tips that you've picked up. Just wanted to do a quick shout out to keep in touch with us via the website. So if you haven't checked it out, please log on. If you want to apply for the flagship program, all on the website. Find out, you know, upcoming events, all on the website. So please take the time to do so. And just really quickly, I wanted to say a huge thank you to our team. And it's lovely that Lorraine touched on, you know, setting systems in place or being supported by other people. Winnie and I haven't done this alone. We've got some real phenomenal human beings who've been supporting us. So Elle, you know, KG, Tina, Harry, they've been brilliant. We've spent an incredible amount of time investing in this. So thank you, everyone. It's been amazing. I've really enjoyed myself. I hope you've all picked something up, and there's lots more information to come. So we'll be pushing out some information to you to let you know what else is coming through. But thank you very much, everyone.